Do you need a hug? Well, today we are talking about research that suggests that having a hug reduces your cortisol levels. So, today's episode, number 106, is for Friday, January the 21st, 2022. We're also going to be talking about not only self awareness, but self focus and serving through love. So, let's jump into the article today. So this article was posted up on SciPost on November 27th, 2021. Headline reads, Receiving a hug or engaging in self-soothing touch reduces cortisol levels following a stressful experience. Now, this originally came out of the Journal of Comprehensive Psychoneuroendocrinology, and it was actually first published in the first part of November 2021. And so this new study suggests that a self-soothing touch, such as placing the hand over one's heart, offers a similar stress-reducing benefit to being hugged by another person. Now, this is different than receiving a hug from a complete stranger after a stress-inducing moment. But let's really look at what happened in this study. So when we take a step back, a study always usually comes out of someone's previous study. So there's been wide reports that interpersonal touch, like being hugged or holding someone's hand, can lower blood pressure. It can give you a feeling of care or safety. But this benefits of self-touch has been less explored. I used to work with a lady, a grandmotherly lady, great woman, that when she came and gave a hug, her hugs were amazing. It wasn't just a once and done. It was a hug that lasted. And if you weren't used to it, you would probably feel uncomfortable by it. But she was willing to give everything that she had in order for you to feel validated, in order for you to feel comforted, in order for you to truly feel how much she cared. So touch has always been one of those important and powerful communicators. And so in this study, which was from a doctoral candidate, they were trying to look to see, well, even by having self-touch, can you have the same effects for in the body? So here, Dresnor, who is the author, said, I teamed up with Dr. Dietzen, who actually wrote a great article showing women who were massaged by their partners had lower cortisol levels in standardized stressful situations. Our research was a natural extension of this article and wanted to show that self-soothing touch and even being hugged can improve our ability to cope with stress. So, of course, they wanted to make the premise that, of course, there are some situations where you can't be hugged or you shouldn't be hugged. And a prime example of this, of course, was with COVID, which is where this had started with. And when there's social distancing and touch, physical touch being avoided, you can't always accept or have those types of hugs. So what would the self-soothing hug, self-soothing touch truly look like? So they had recruited 159 adults with an average age of 21. So you're looking at, early college age here to take part in this experiment. They were looking to explore whether social identity might moderate the impact of touch. Participants were randomly assigned to undergo a manipulation that either emphasized their personal or their social identities. All participants then experienced a stress induction where they needed to prepare a speech about themselves and also complete a arithmetic math task. They were given 5 minutes to prepare the speech, in which they were then to recite in front of a panel of Confederate judges. Okay, so before going in to give their speech, the participants were either given a 20-second hug by a Confederate. So that was the hug condition. So this was of a researcher that already knew what was going on. They were also, others were told to give themselves 20 seconds of a self-soothing touch to calm themselves, or told to build a paper airplane, and that was their control condition group. The participants that were in the self-touch condition were also given examples of self-touch gestures. Most everyone placed their hands like over their heart or over their abdomen or stomach area. So throughout the study, they were asked to rate their stress levels and actually were provided salivary cortisol samples at various time points. They were rating their heart rate, they were measuring it to see, is it truly going up, staying the same, or going down? So from their findings here, that they had all conditions, the participants' cortisol levels went up when in stress induction. So when stress actually occurred, regardless of the three groups, their cortisol levels actually went up. Now, those groups that were in the hug group or the self-touch group, their cortisol levels went down. Compared to that control group making the paper airplanes, their levels stayed the same. Now, what's interesting also, as a last measure, 40 minutes after the stress induction, cortisol levels were measured once again. And guess what? All three were the same. So neither heart rate nor self-reported stress differed by touch conditions, but the researchers found no moderating effects for their social identity. So from this study, Dresner-Worley wants us to know, first of all, hugging and touching others can help them with stressful situations. And that's been shown in previous studies and all the way through. So before going into an exam, before going for a job interview, before visiting a doctor's office, for these difficult situations, yes, a hug does help. But looking at these self-touch gestures, it's amazing that, we regulate ourselves by touch. And people that touch themselves, they do this sometimes even subconsciously, not even thinking about it. Some listeners right now might even be touching their hands or their face, and that's a self-touch that lets you cope with stress and differences, and it's how we perceive. And so it's really important that we truly come to understand these processes. So they really want us to know that in this process, there's two responsible factors here. One might be that, touch truly stimulates what they call the C fiber receptors, those nerve fibers that then go and stimulate our vagal nerve system and our parasympathetic activity, those things that truly heighten our senses. And that is that response to stress. Other parts of this, though, might also be dealing with culture and touch and wanting to belong and that true safety and mindfulness that we look to induce. So once again, as with all studies, they base it on previous studies, and they always leave it open for future studies that self-touch might be more promising than truly a touch in many situations that we're put in. Whenever you need a cup of coffee that's always smooth and never bitter, try Cameron's Coffee. It's the closest I've personally found to the perfect roast. There are so many flavors to choose, but I always seem to reach for the breakfast blend. And for those busy weekday mornings, try the EcoPods. Click the link below to order yours today. So is it self-aware or is it self-focus? So many times in the counseling sessions, especially recently, I will hear the word narcissistic come up. My partner or spouse is narcissistic. And typically we really have to break that down in the session to fully understand what that terminology is, because we use it so flippantly and so easily for this set of criteria that we're ready to throw at another partner that's there. But truly, if we look at the previous study talking about hugs and talking about self-soothing gestures or activities, that means that you have to be self-aware that something is heightening your experience. Something is heightening the situation that you're in. Something's going on that isn't cool, kosher whatsoever. Instead, it's something that really needs to be addressed. But if we're not looking and examining, then we have the ability to redline it, to go beyond, and for it to be a total fail. And so here, I really want to encourage you to start going ahead and giving yourself the opportunity to be self-aware. You know, all these smartwatches now will tell you whether your heart rate's going too high, whether you don't have enough activity going on. But that's not the type of self-aware I'm talking about. You know, yes, you can feel your heart rate going up. You can feel shallow breathing. You can feel that which is making you anxious. But if you know you're going into a speech, like from that study, what can you do to self-soothe rather than ramp it up to the next level or the nth level to make anxiety flare? And that often is what happens in a counseling session. People will catastrophize what's to come. But when I ask them, so what does your crystal ball say? How accurate is your crystal ball? Because mine sure isn't accurate. I can't really truly predict what that's going to look like. They go from thinking the worst to truly being self-aware, truly being able to monitor their thoughts, their feelings, their reactions to what's at hand. And you might think that would cause more anxiety, greater anxiety. But as you come to understand what those triggers are, when you come to understand what those behaviors are, when you come to understand so much more about yourself, you go ahead and you're able to change. Now, like I said, this isn't about being self-focused. Self-focus tends to, on the extreme pendulum swing, becomes that narcissism. It's all about me, I, and no one else. But we live in a world that's interactional. We live in a world that goes beyond just you in a bubble. And so by being interactional, it can't just be focused on the I or the me. You have to look on how that interaction is played out with others. So if you were just focused on how you step walking down the street, you might have the perfect gait or walk. You might have the perfect pace so your heart rate doesn't go up. You might even have the right shoes that you're wearing to go for this type of a walk. But if you don't look at where you're going, you're going to end up going off the curb, into traffic, even running into someone else coming towards you. You can't just focus on yourself. You've got to go ahead and focus outside of yourself. Being aware of the steps of your pace, but still being able to look outwards to the environment, to those around you, and to take those cues in and assess them. Change your pace, walk a little faster. Change your gait, walk to the left. No, to the right, because everyone's on the right-hand side of the sidewalk. So in going ahead and coming up with this self-awareness, if you need more tips for this, maybe for a future podcast, let me know. Let me know your thoughts. Be more than willing to give up more ideas about how to be more self-aware. And even so that self-awareness helps with anxiety, with social situations, with workplace situations, whatever it might be. Real dark chocolate and pretzel protein bars that both taste great and nourish us. Nugo offers so many types of bars and cookies for your enjoyment, but I always stick with the best. Plus, it's gluten-free. Click the link below to order yours today. So I wanted to close out today with a reading from the Christian Bible, from in the New Testament, from Galatians chapter 5, for us to truly realize that for greater than 2,000 years, there's been laws and a way of life that have been purported, that have been pushed, that have been acknowledged as greater than any one society or civilization or culture. So in chapter 5, verse 13, you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free. But do not use your freedom to indulge in the flesh, but rather serve one another humbly in love. For the entire law is fulfilled in keeping one commandment: Love your neighbor as yourself. If you bite and devour each other, watch out, or you will be destroyed by each other. And so if you don't know really what that means, or you don't know what indulging in the flesh is, that's verse 19. If you don't know what the fruit or the gift that can come from this is, it's chapter 20, verse 22. Read chapter 5. See what speaks to you. See if you can be self-aware for what you need to change. Peace.